What's up, everybody? Welcome to the One Choice Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Hoffman. This is another episode of The Truth, where I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Welcome back to the show. Welcome if you're new to the show. As usual, please like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps when you leave reviews, it helps when you rate the podcast, and it helps when you subscribe to the podcast. So do me a favor and do that. And also, share the podcast with somebody that you know. If you're listening to this podcast religiously, share it with people. If it's benefiting you, share it with people. That also helps us grow. Today's episode, good, better, best. What is good, better, best? And why is it that I want to talk about good, better, best? Recently, I was talking to somebody and I left them with a message that I tell quite a few people. And that message was very simple. It was, be great. And the reply that I got from this person when I said, be great, is what created this podcast, because many of you and many of us are in this place where when somebody says, be great, you give the response or you feel the response inside you that this person gave me. And that response that the person gave me was really simple. Yeah, I'm not quite there yet. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, you are. And yeah, this person is. And yeah, you are, the ones that are listening. But you may not feel that you're great. And the reason that this person told me that they're not great is why I made this podcast. Because that reason that that person gave me, that they're just not there yet, is actually the root of why they're not taking action. It's the root of why you're not taking action. And I want to tell you why you're not taking action, because you don't feel great enough. And when you don't take action, that's actually the reason that you feel sad. That's actually the reason that you're depressed. It's actually the reason that you're anxious. And it's actually the reason why you're discontent and you're unhappy. See, what happens is we go through life experiences, and these life experiences, whatever those are in your life, create a belief system. And that belief system is directly related to your self-worth. Which means whatever you went through in your life at a certain time or right now, these experiences are being processed by our brains. And when we process this information and we process this experience, we actually come to a place where we start to believe things, and those beliefs drive our belief system or our self-worth. See, some of us have been sexually abused as kids. Some of us have been emotionally neglected as kids. Some of us were below average in school. If you're like me, you sucked in school. Some of us have experienced verbal abuse or even physical abuse from our families. Some of our worst critics were our mothers and our fathers. Maybe they were abusive about our sports gifts. Maybe they were abusive about our school performance. Maybe whatever it is that we did, our parents were always there to criticize us. And as a result of that criticism, we created a belief system and a value about ourself that said, I'm not good enough. I can't be good enough. And therefore, every time something comes into play where you say, well, I want to do this, or I want to do that, or maybe you need to overcome some kind of obstacle in your life, when you meet that obstacle, you instinctually revert back to the belief system that was created as a result of the experience that you had with your parents, or with the sexual abuse that filled you with shame and filled you with guilt, and you told yourself, this was my fault. If I would have done this differently, this would have never happened to me. And from that day forward, you felt like you couldn't be loved. You felt like you weren't worthy of what other people are worthy of. You judged yourself more harshly than you did other people. And because you did that, you created a belief system within yourself that lowered your value. And that value is exactly why you're not taking action. And that inaction is exactly why you're sad. It's exactly why you're depressed, anxious, discontent, and unhappy. And yet you're not recognizing that there is a root. There is a root to why you feel this way. There is a root to why you won't take action. But until you recognize that root, you can't overcome that obstacle. You won't clear the hurdle that's sitting in front of you that allows you to take action and break the chains that are holding you back. But here's the problem. You may have sucked in school. Your parents may have put you down. You may have been sexually abused. And you may have been made fun of growing up by students, by people, for the things that you were trying to do. And while these experiences are real, you're choosing to believe the story that you created about these experiences, and that's stopping you from taking action. So what do? It's really simple. You recognize the fear when it's stopping you. I get it all the time, guys. I'm not some special person that doesn't experience these own things in my life. I have just gotten to a point where I recognize when this fear is occurring. I recognize when I'm being stopped by an experience driven by a belief system that I created at some point in my life. And I have learned how to recognize when that fear comes up, and I can ask myself, where does this fear come from? And I try and search that out. And when I search that out and I find an answer, I move. And I move through the fear. Because if I don't move through the fear, and if you don't move through the fear, you will repeat the same patterns that you've been working through almost your entire life. Maybe you just got divorced and you're telling yourself that because you have 2, 3, maybe even 4 kids as a single mom, that no man would ever love you. What is that? That's fear. That's fear being driven by a situation where you had to get divorced, so you tell yourself nobody wants a divorced person. Then you tell yourself nobody wants a divorced person with kids. And so all of a sudden you start creating this belief system around that experience that lowers your value. And what do you do with that lower value? You go and attach yourself to a person who is not good enough for the value that you actually have. If you don't overcome that fear, if you don't recognize that fear, you will never reach what belongs to you. You will never you will never manifest your true potential. I have gotten good at recognizing when that fear comes up, asking myself, where does it come from, and making a decision that I'm not going to operate on old patterns. Those old patterns that stop me from taking action, those old patterns that lead me to being unhappy, that lead me to being sad or depressed or anxious. The next thing is you have to understand that failure is inevitable. Failure is going to happen. You're going to try and you're not going to get it right the first time maybe. You're going to try and you're not going to get it right the 100th time maybe. But you have to understand that you're going to fail. And in that failure, people will say things. In that failure, you will be judged. In that failure, you will be made fun of. But here's the deal. Anybody that makes fun of somebody that's trying to do things is scared of executing and taking action themselves. That's the only reason they make fun of people. One of my favorite quotes is, "You will never see a person who's ahead of you doing work make fun of somebody that's behind them. Why? Because they know what it's like. I know what it's like for every person who's trying to start a nonprofit right now. I know what it's like for every person trying to start a podcast right now. I know what it's like for every person who's trying to create a podcast right now and struggling. Because I've been there. I know what it's like because I've been there. Why would I turn around and make fun of somebody who's putting in the effort that I had to put in effort to get to where I'm at? I wouldn't. So when people make fun of me, when people have things to say about what I'm doing, I recognize that these people are behind me and not taking action. These are people who are scared to take action themselves, because the people who are taking action, they would never make fun of me. They would recognize, man, Hoff's on the grind. They would recognize, man, Hoff's a hustler. They would recognize, man, Hoff's got big dreams. They would recognize that I'm not going to stop based on an opinion of somebody else, and you can't stop based on an opinion of somebody else either. Failure is going to happen. But when you learn how to use that failure to create adjustments in your execution, that's like the icing on the cake. That's when you become unstoppable. If you can develop that, and you can develop the relentlessness that allows you to sacrifice and discipline yourself in a daily routine over and over and over and over, while everybody's sleeping, you're awake, while everybody's inside, you're outside, while everybody's outside, you're inside, while everybody's doing the easy thing, you decide to do the hard thing. If you can do that and mix the ability to fail and create adjustments in your execution, that's the Mamba mentality. That's the Jordan mentality. That's the mentality of people who do things great. That's the mentality of fathers who are just that much better. That's the mentality of mothers that are just that much better. That's the mentality of a barber who just goes to a shop versus the barber who builds his own brand, has an Instagram with 100,000 followers, a YouTube account that's making him money, and he gets to travel around to barbershops around the country if he wants to, making money because so many people have learned who he is and love his craft. There's a sign right behind me. Your greatest teacher is your last mistake. I made a lot of mistakes to get to where I'm at right now. One of the issues I had growing up was I didn't know how to use my mistakes to teach me to be successful. I used my mistakes and I put myself down. I used my mistakes and I created a belief system that lowered my value as a person, and that lower value drove a behavior that stopped me from taking action and put me in places I didn't belong and got me to do things that I shouldn't have been doing, and the result was nil. When I got out of prison, I got on the phone with family friend. His name's Ricky Johnson. He's 5-time Supercross champion in motocross. My dad taught him how to ride a motorcycle growing up, and he's stayed friends and obviously grateful for the work that my dad did with him when he was a young kid. And he knew I was coming back to BMX racing, and something he told me will stay with me for the rest of my life, because this is a man that exemplifies what I'm talking about right now. A champion of champions, multiple champion, has gone on to do great things outside of motocross. He said, Tony, if you don't wake up and walk into the bathroom and stand in front of the mirror every single day and look at what you see and tell yourself that you are the greatest BMXer in the world, you will never be a champion. And I thought to myself, how do you do that? How do you get up every day and look in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm a champion? That's not easy to do. But it's something I've had to learn to do. And it's not in a cocky manner. This is about me and reaching my potential. And in reaching my potential, I can help more people. I can do more things. If you don't look in the mirror and tell yourself that you are a champion every single day, you will never break through that fear that's holding you back, because you won't have the ability to make your good better and your better best. That's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.